Variety was the spice of life. Though duels traditionally took place between two individuals, the once personal event had evolved into a sport viewed by hundreds of millions worldwide. The audience relished the chaos of group and themed battles, so outside of matches to determine a person's official rank, most modern duels pitted teams of 5 to 15 against one another. Similar to how the hero king, Callum, led the world's forces against those of the creator god, individual duelist teams were broken down into 3 groups of 5. The first was a scouting party, representing those who had ventured into the very heart of enemy territory. The second was known as the Iron Wall, prioritizing defense and safeguarding various objectives and control points. As for the last, representing King Callum and his wives, the progenitors of the 4 great constellations, their duty was to serve as a multi-purpose strike force. They were also the only ones who could claim objectives, and if the king were eliminated, the match would be called in the enemy's favor. "Are you nervous?" asked Heist, noticing that Medine was even quieter than usual, seemingly lost in thought as she sat with the other members of the scouting party in their waiting room. They were only minutes from her first official match against a rival academy's first-year duelist team, so a bit of trepidation was to be expected. "Why would I be nervous?" asked Medine, causing Heist to exhale an awkward chuckle before remarking, "It just seems like you're not all here, you know. Want to talk about it?" Had Heist asked such a question 3 months prior, Medine would have ignored her, or told her to mind her own business. She still wasn't all that sociable, but as she spent more time with girls her age and people who seemed to genuinely care about her, she gradually lowered her defenses. Averting her eyes, concealed by her visor, Medine softly explained, "Will has been helping Aisha, a girl from our class, train." "Oh?" hummed Heist, a cat-like expression developing across her face as she drew nearer to ask, "Then, why are you acting all depressed? Get angry, and then channel that anger into today's match." "I have no reason to be angry," grumbled Medine, her sulky tone and body language a stark contrast to her claim. "You really like him, don't you?" asked Heist, giving Medine a bit of space and crossing her arms. "Not that I can't understand," added Heist. "He's tall, muscular, has a great background, and is a lot more mature than most boys our age. Have you tried asking him out?" Contemplating her response, Medine eventually answered, "Will doesn't have an interest in things like girls and romance. He says he wants to focus on his training." That does sound like something he'd say," affirmed Heist, raising her gaze to a spot above Madine's head, recalling how relaxed, borderline, casual Will was around member of the opposite sex. Most boys got flustered or couldn't prevent their eyes from wandering, but Will always stared off into space or focused on whatever he was doing unless you said or did something to catch his attention. It made him easy to be around, but it was definitely strange. "Hey, cut the chatter and get ready," said the de facto leader of the scouting party, a young boy with short brown hair, bright blue eyes, and a pair of bladed shield-like gauntlets for weapons. "Shove it up your bum, Art. Your rank might place you above us, but if you think that gives you the right to dictate when and what we talk about, you're delusional," countered Heist, giving Art a 3-fingered gesture with her index finger and thumb forming a loop, effectively telling him he could fuck off. "I don't care what you talk about on your own time," contended Art. "But we nearly lost our last match against the Varnes Institute. If we don't remain focused, it isn't just our reputations that are on the line." Yeah, responded Heist, waving Art off before returning her attention to Medine and stating, "Anyways, you should still try asking him out. If you think he'll refuse, tell him you feel like you've reached a bottleneck and ask him to help you overcome it. Will may act mature, but he's still a boy. If you can get him alone and act vulnerable, he should try to comfort you. If that doesn't work, you could try acting distant. If he cares about you, he'll take notice and come to ask if you're okay. That's when you lay things bare or pounce." "Do things like that actually work?" asked Medine, having little knowledge of the intricacies of interpersonal relationships, much less romance. "Well, I'm not exactly a love guru," replied Heist, spreading her hands and shrugging, But I was pretty popular among the boys I used to run around with back at my family's estate. In the end, just like you want Will to focus on and spend time with you, most guys just want attention, someone who can support them, or someone they can unwind with. If you can figure out what Will's missing and provide it, he'll be like putty in your hands. I don't know, muttered Medine, hanging her head and slumping her shoulders as she remarked, I don't think Will is missing anything, and the only thing I'm good at is something he's much better at. This girl has it down bad, thought Heist, scratching her head. She also felt that Will was a catch, but as she had no desire to become something like a lady, she could never date him. Not seriously, at least. Well, he sure as stool stinks isn't perfect, said Heist. I think the bigger issue is the number of girls who view him as a kind of jackpot in terms of marriageability. If I'm right, the main reason Will refuses to date anyone is because he doesn't want to hurt the feelings of his admirers. Then there's the fact that any girl he dates will become a target of ire for everyone who feels like he could have been theirs. Though she was tempted to ask why Heist presented everyone as being possessive, Medine could vaguely comprehend why. She didn't feel that Will belonged to her, but if he dated another girl, she would likely resent and find all kinds of faults with them. It wasn't rational, but neither were the emotions she had been experiencing from the moment Will aided and subsequently ignored her. I feel like my heart is going to burst, thought Lyra, sitting beside Will in the skybox reserved for exceptionally high-ranking nobles and members of the royal family. She expected them to sit and maybe chat about the forthcoming match, but shortly after they sat down, Will held out his right hand, compelling her to place her left within its grasp. As Lyra rarely went anywhere alone, Claire, Delphina, Emily, Theo, and Oda were present alongside a host of cloaked figures and maids. Lyra had informed the members of her group about her and Will's arrangement the previous night, but seeing them sitting beside each other and holding hands caused Delphina's usual deadpan to stiffen like a porcelain doll, and Claire's gaze to burn a hole in them. So much for not dating before you graduate? Muttered Claire, staring at Will with an accusatory glower. No one knows what the future holds, responded Will, closing his eyes as he asserted, but these past few months have been tiresome, to say the least. Hopefully, once my relationship with Lyra becomes known, most of the girls targeting me will give up. Oh, so what, you're using Lyra as a shield? Asked Claire, her expression making it clear she was annoyed. That goes both ways, asserted Lyra, her voice calm and expression firm as she reminded, You know how keen Her Majesty is to wed me and my sisters to households far removed from the capital's politics. If my future spouse is someone of Will's standing, not even she will be able to oppose it. I get that, muttered Claire, looking conflicted as she asked, But what about our promise to stay together, even if we have to run away? Will has made it pretty clear he has no interest in taking on a mistress or accepting concubines. That doesn't mean you can't remain together, Will contended. Once you graduate, you're all welcome to stay at Eastwarden. Lyra will need you for her protection and to care for her when I'm not around. The problem with that is that our families are depending on us to form or reinforce ties with other houses, argued Claire. I don't mind becoming a pariah or being ousted from the nobility, but I don't want to give people leverage they could use to put pressure on Lyra. That doesn't matter in the slightest, declared Will, his voice producing a slight, unintentional echo as he shook his head, met Claire's gaze, and added, Mine and Lyra's ideas are bound to shake the very foundations of the kingdom. We're bound to have enemies attacking us from all sides, so it won't matter if there are a few more groups added to that total. It might never be as lovers, but so long as we work and fight together, we can endure everything that's thrown at us. Surprised by the fervor contained in Will's words, the four girls and one trap found themselves affected by a stunned silence. Lyra was the first to recover, but instead of saying anything, she snuck a peek at Will from the corner of her eyes before lowering her face to conceal a blush. She knew he could be brazen after entertaining his antics during their first meeting, but she was taken by how passionate he was. Recovering shortly after Lyra, Claire crossed her arms in a huff, adopted a disapproving frown, and asked, Do you have to word things in such a finite manner? It wasn't that long ago that you claimed, "No one knows what the future holds." You might be against the idea now, but how can you say for sure you won't be tempted once Delphina, Emily, and I become bombshell beauties admired and desired throughout the capital? The least you could do is admit there's a chance. Shrugging, Will conceded, anything's possible. Just don't get... Before Will could finish telling her not to get her hopes up, Claire pumped both of her fists, her vermilion eyes blazing like flames as she exclaimed, "Now we're freaking talking. Just you wait, Will. I'm going to become so hot that simply looking at a photo of me makes you sweat." "That would certainly improve your chances," Will joked, underestimating just how serious Claire was being. He had also never seen the photos she kept of her mother and eldest sister. If he had, he would have known that, given time, Claire was bound to mature into a remarkable beauty. She was also the third-ranked duelist in her year, and, as she was determined to become a brave candidate, she was constantly doing her best to improve and grow stronger. Unfortunately for Claire, Lyra, and pretty much every other girl who was pining for him or had aspirations of becoming his lady, Will presently had no intention of marrying. He would make good on his promise with Lyra if he became the Lord of Eastwarden. But since that was predicated on him not reuniting and forming alternative plans with the other sages, the odds were about 90-10 against her. If he included Andrika, it was more like 10,000 to 1.